So, if I had to say something about this new moon in Gemini, it would probably be that we are really focusing on structuring our ideas and that perhaps we might be affirming or preparing to sever certain connections. And I'm about to tell you why. If you don't already know me, my name is Krista Lynn. I'm your astrology mentor. And today I want to really go over this new moon that is occurring in Gemini with the sun and the moon and Mercury, all actually in Gemini right now. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to walk you through the chart and give you some ideas on how we can actually put this moon to use and what you might notice coming up around you for it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and give you a little look at the new moon happening in Gemini. If you see me looking to the side, it's because I have a bigger screen over here where I get to look at the chart with you. And so what we're noticing again is we have this new moon happening in Gemini. The sun and the moon are exactly conjunct. This creates a new moon because the moon being new, we notice this as there is no moon. It's becoming new. This is because the moon's literally not even up in the sky at the time of this lunation. It's going to be with the sun, wherever the sun is. So since this new moon is exact for us, of course, at night, we're not going to be seeing the moon up in the sky. It will be a darker night than usual. And there's some other things going on here as well. If we look at this new moon, this one happens to be in Gemini. Gemini is characterized by communication, by connection, by sort of people to people interaction. You can think of the Gemini symbol as, of course, the twins. So it takes two in that situation, or there's a lot of thinking in that situation. It's an air sign. So one of the things it encourages us to do is get really conceptual with ideas. And Gemini is also mutable or changeable. So it can do a lot of things at once. We often think of Mercury and also Gemini. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, but Gemini is the sign being very changeable, being very intellectual. This is the fun fact sign of the zodiac, as my partner can attest. It is actually also his birthday on this day. So it's really interesting to be able to see that this is also his solar return. But for everybody, this is a new moon in Gemini. This is us getting our ideas going, starting to think, maybe doing a lot of things at once, especially since we can notice that Mercury, again, the ruler of Gemini, is there with us in Gemini. We actually call this when Mercury is in the same sign of their domicile and with the sun there. When a planet is in their domicile along with the sun, it's called chariot. And so we have Mercury in chariot with the sun during a new moon. And Mercury has some interactions going on as well. So if this is in Mercury's territory, Mercury might have a say as to the way this tends to play out. And Mercury is still experiencing a little bit of their square to Saturn, as we can see up here. So we're still actually being really precise, or maybe we're putting some precision into the thoughts that we're having around this. And one of the things that we can notice is that will be really helpful for the fact that the sun later in this day will also square Neptune. So there might be a little bit of confusion. There might be a little bit of support from Saturn in this case, where Saturn to Mercury gives us sharpness of thoughts or sharpness of mind. As the sun, our energy wanes a little bit, or is kind of dealing with some lethargic energy or lethargy, thanks to the square with Neptune. That is something because Neptune is a transpersonal planet, very slow moving. This is something that I would see as the sun bringing this to a personal level, but we might notice this more in the headlines since interactions with Neptune seem to happen on higher scales or more broader senses. Another thing that we can actually look at that's also happening around this time is jumping over to Saturn. We see that this interaction between Saturn and Jupiter is about to happen. Saturn, of course, is moving backwards towards the 6th degree. Jupiter is moving forwards towards the 7th degree. So they are applying to an aspect of their opening sextile aspect. This little blue line here with the little star, that's the angle that they are making. It would be a sixth of the way around. You'd get a hexagon here if you had them all the way. And this sextile is the first interaction between Saturn and Jupiter since they had their conjunction over in Aquarius. Whoops. You can get more information on Saturn by double clicking, but over in Aquarius back in 2020. So you can see this is something that's been a long time coming. We began a whole new cycle. Conjunctions between Saturn and Jupiter are actually known as great conjunctions. And in fact, it is one of the theories that a conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter was the actual origin of the Star of Bethlehem. That's not necessarily proven, but you can see how much importance this carries. in the context of society as it moves forward. So we have seen that since then, Jupiter's made his way over here to Taurus, right here, and Saturn has come out of Aquarius and now moved into Pisces. This is a time where Saturn is, for the first time in like 6 years, out of their own domicile, not in a place where they have all of their resources anymore. And so we're kind of wandering as Saturn in Pisces. And now Saturn is moving backwards. So Saturn does this pretty much every year, but Saturn is having their retrograde and moving backwards will not make it all the way back to Aquarius. So anybody who had your Saturn return in Aquarius, you do not have to worry about a replay. Saturn will remain in Pisces for the duration of the next few years, but especially for this retrograde. And this sextile with Jupiter is going to give us little hints. Again, this is something I would check the headlines for because both of these are social planets. They're not really being connected to a personal planet. Venus is right here, but these two are a couple degrees away. So if anything, it's Jupiter interacting, not necessarily Saturn, because as you can see, there are no lines that we can make really pretty between Saturn and Venus. So we might notice an interaction between the two benefics having their square, which has already perfected. So we've already kind of played that story. What we're looking for now is what society is showing us about how far we've come since December of 2020 and really where we might continue to head from there. So if I were to look at this new moon and say, what do I think is the best way to make use of this? I'm going to say that, again, it's about respecting your own boundaries as well as others. And so that's the affirmation that I'd like to share is I respect my own boundaries as well as others, because just as much as you have your right to boundaries, so do they. And it really helps us understand compatibility in our relationships. What boundaries are we able to respect and work with? And what boundaries aren't really right for us, both internally and with other people. It's something to keep in mind as we're going through this, maybe more cerebral of new moons as we go as well. So another thing is to make a pros and cons list of any decisions that are feeling a little stuck lately. And you can go through and simply ask yourself, what are your standards? What are your ideals? What are your boundaries regarding these situations and in your relationships and in opportunities? And then feel, is this heck yes, I'm all in, or is it a not right now, or I'm all out? That will help you make your decisions. And of course, you can always use muscle testing, which is pinching your fingers together. When you say yes, they will hold in that little circle. When you say no and you try to pull them apart, your muscles will tend to give out, especially if you are well hydrated so that your muscles have things to work with. So a really quick tutorial on muscle testing to help you through that pros and cons list as well. And really, this is what we're looking at as this new moon is perfect. It perfects its conjunction at 12:37 a.m. Eastern time. So you can adjust that to your time zone and use this new moon how you feel. If you're using it, you might use it a little bit after. The moon is still new for about 45 degrees after it perfects with its conjunction in the sun. And a fun fact about astrological magic is a conjunction with the sun is actually not as useful as it might sound unless it's absolutely perfect. So in this case, you would want the moon to be maybe within 15 numbers, 15 degree minutes of this 43 here. You could do something that is very new moon, or you can still make use of a little less stringent or rigid structure by saying after this new moon, even as soon as it moves to 44, you can start thinking about how you might want to apply it if you're doing any intention work at this time. That's my recommendation. So with that, I want to thank you. If you want to be able to follow me and work with me some more, I do my little funny planet skits on TikTok and on Instagram at The Real Crystalline. You can also interact with me on the Forgotten Storytellers, the Alchemist Inkwell podcast, and Ask Me Astros, where we are still accepting questions from you that my friend CV and I will then choose from to actually give a live anonymous reading for the chart that gets chosen. So feel free to submit your question and your chart information to askmeastros.com, and we will be looking forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic and wonderful and curious new moon.